Welcome to the SEC Unfiltered platform, folks. I'm your host, Dave Shumate, joined by our guy, Cole Thompson. If you're on X, Twitter, whatever they're calling it these days, give him a follow at Mr. Cole Thompson. But we're reacting to the last coach of the 2024 SEC Media Days.
Best for last.
The dean, Mark Stoops from the University of Kentucky is the final coach of the day and of the Media Days. We would have came sooner, my fault. We had some internet issues over on the Shumate side of things, so that's on me. But we're here, no better time than now. I mean, Cole, and this kind of stood out to me with Stoops was, again, I think at least I've kept saying this, is confidence. Exuded some confidence, talked about how they're one of the few teams in the country in the SEC that has been to 8 straight bowl games. I think he said it was only them, Alabama, and Georgia that have done that. It's impressive. Really ready to take it that next step, though. You can tell – I'd have to look at it off the top of my head, though. I think it's 2-24, 25 that Kentucky's record is against SEC teams with winning records. So I think you can tell Mark Stoops and them have been harping on, hey, guys, we got to take that next step. I think, Cole, you would agree. It starts up front with the big blue wall, giving Georgia transfer quarterback Brock Vandagriff time to make plays. I think the running game is going to be utilized this year. I think Bush Hamdan is the big key. Again, and he mentioned it, another year, another OC at Kentucky. Bush Hamdan coming over from Boise State, who actually had SEC quarterback now, Taylon Green, is his disposable last year. How will he be this year? I think a lot of it's going to come down to, can we get back to what we were accustomed seeing, physical offensive line play for Mark Stoops. Cole, what do you have anything else to add on that, brother?
Yeah, there's one other team. It was Oklahoma that has been to 8
was
straight
Oklahoma,
movies. Oklahoma, Kentucky. Yeah, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Georgia, Alabama. Which, by the way, also what I just find so baffling, the coach at Kentucky is the longest tenured coach now in the SEC.
Why?
Like, that used to be an oxymoron. That would have made everyone seem like they were the worst job all imaginable. Holy crap! Are you kidding me? Like my God. So it's like, I'm sitting here, and it's just but at the same time, you look at the job he's done, and you got to give a lot of credit. The man every 3 years has this roster getting ready for a 9-win-plus season, and I feel like that again. You look at the numbers, you look at the backing, you look at the transfer portal, you look at the way that things have gone. There's 3 elements. Number 1, a more manageable schedule. Number 2, a defensive front that always is going to be potent, and number 3, a quarterback that elevates the status, usually coming from another school. Before it was Will Levis coming from Penn State. Now you get Brock Vandagriff coming on over from Georgia. There's a sense that there is going to be leadership at certain positions that they need to step up. I love that he brought up defensive line. Yeah, you have Deion Walker, but you got to have someone else really be that difference maker. I love that he brought up the linebacking core. You know, they bring over Jamon Dumas-Johnson, that was a really good player. Like, people are going to say all the time, oh, well, they left a place like Georgia. That means they're not good. Guys, this was an all-SEC linebacker that got hurt and somebody else replaced him. Like, that's the level of competition that you see in Athens. That's all you get. So you can't even compare the two when it comes down to that. I also just love the fact that he's bringing up how this is a team that is very well prepared mentally. And I think that the mental aspect of things is where it's really going to carry weight, because we know physically we've seen Kentucky go pound for pound with teams in the SEC, really solid teams in the SEC. But the mentality aspect, the ability to win in the fourth quarter, that's been some hindrances over the last few years. But again, every third year, watch, rinse, repeat. Here comes Mark Stoops with the 9-win season. You know what it reminds me a lot of in a more promising light? When Marvin Lewis was the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, he would always enter on the hot seat. And then he would lead the Bengals to the playoffs and to get an immediate contract extension. And we'd be rewriting how we feel about Cincinnati. Well, they're a playoff team. Are they a Super Bowl team? That's kind of how I feel about Kentucky every few years. They're good enough to be one of the better rosters and feel confident in the SEC, but they're not right there. But the difference is that now with the 12-team playoff, they could be right there. This is one of those sleeper wild cards.
No, I'm with you. The defense, I don't know how you couldn't be high on Brad White, Mark Stoops, both defensive guys. Obviously, Brad White being the defense coordinator. Like you said, they have 10 out of 11 starters. I'm with you. The front 7 could be a top 3 to 4 unit in the league. Like you said, Jamon Dumas-Johnson, massive get from Georgia. You mentioned Deion Walker. He's a no-brainer. I think J.J. Weaver's a big guy. The Jack backer that could have a big say for them. I think defensively, you would agree probably. If there's a question mark defensively before we get into offense, the secondary, probably they gave up some big. They're a big, long, high cut secondary.
But where would you say is the question? Because I don't have it in the nickel. I have it at the safety spot, and I have it maybe at one of the corner. I
was going to say one of the corner spots, then safety. Yeah, but I agree with you. Not one of the nickel spots. No, I'm with you. That's kind of the front seven's fine. Secondary, but again, I think you could make an argument with everybody. Secondary, they kind of have some issues at times. Hell, Jordan, talking to people at Georgia, they're concerned about their other safety spot opposite of Malachi Starks. I think just me and you talk about it with as many DBs as people play with now, with it being such a spread offense, spatial game. You're playing with 5 to 6 DBs constantly, nickel dime. Nobody really has a ton of depth, so it's honestly making even the better teams like Georgia thin. So I mean, you can make the case for everybody. Offensively, though, Cole, you can attest they have to get back to being good up front on the offensive line. I think they actually have some. I mean, I think the key will be Gerald Mincey at the right tackle spot. Yeah. What he's been at Florida, he's been at Tennessee, now he's at Kentucky. Because I like Marquise Cox, left tackle, Eli Cox, a good center, Jagger Burton at right guard spot. They have some weapons. I mean, they do. I mean, the running back room, I think, is going to be fine. They brought the Trainum kid, I believe. I'm looking at him now. Devontae Trainum came over from Ohio State, I do believe.
Trainum.
Yeah, and then they have the tight end. I thought Jordan Dingle and Josh Caddis could be good in the passing game as well. A thing that the receivers, they have some weapons. But I saw someone posted this a couple months, and when I went back and watched it, it's true. Devin Leary had the most dropped balls in the conference last year.
Yeah, he did. I saw that, and I could not believe
Darian Brown and Dane Key. So I thought they had a good year the year with Will Levis. When Will Levis got time, they had a good season. But last year, yeah, I mean, it wasn't all on Devin Leary because you had the offensive line and the receivers dropping balls. But I think if the offense can take that next step, I mean, the defense is always keeping them in games every year under Mark Stoops and Brad White. I like Brock Vandagriff. I think the run game, I know they lost Rodriguez and they lost our guy. Who was it 2 years ago? Name slipping my mind right now. Who was their guy? That was Rodriguez.
No, Rodriguez was 2 years ago. Last year was Ray Davis.
From the Vanderbilt transfer. You're right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they have either of those kind of backs this year, but something they haven't had is they're going to incorporate in the run game, I think, is Brock Vandagriff. So I think that'll be different for Bush Hampton. But any other concerns for you just across the board?
He's so sneaky as a runner, which I don't think – well, and that's, again, goes back to my point about when we talked to Jamon Dumas-Johnson and everyone's sitting here going, well, he must have not been good at Kentucky. I mean, at Georgia because he transferred to Kentucky. Guys, I truly believe in the multiverse, and I have said on multiple occasions, there is a reality out there where Brock Vandagriff, not Carson Beck, wins the starting job, and they end up terrorizing everybody once again, and they go play for a national title. So that's the level of quarterback that has now resided in Lexington. There is a mobility aspect to his game. I don't think that we're talking like Jalen Daniels or even Dylan Gabriel. What I'm saying is, you look at a 3rd and 2, he is not going to be afraid to tuck and run and push his way forward for a gain of 7, then reset the clock. A name that is not getting brought up enough that I think needs to is Jamori Macklin. This was such a good wide receiver last year in Conference USA, over 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns. He averaged 17.7 yards per play, and you're pairing him alongside Dane Key and Barian Brown. And I think that if they can get a little bit more of touch on the football, because the one thing I did notice about Leary's passes were they were not only erratic, but they had one speed to them a lot. So
there was no hand talent. You're right.
There was velocity. Like a 5-yard slant and a 30-yard vertical were getting thrown at the exact same speed. So maybe that does benefit them with a little bit more touch on the football. Hamden worked in an offense that was a little bit more spread out when it came to wanting to target wide receivers at Boise State. They revamped when he was going and working with the quarterbacks as the quarterbacks coach underneath Spencer Danielson. So I'm interested to see what this team is like. The offensive line, I think, is still going to be the big question mark for them.
Eric Wolford's back. I mean, and he was there last time they were.
They got some guys. They brought in Jalen Farmer from the transfer portal. They have Gerald Mincey. That they bring back Eli Cox. So they have some guys available that you know about, and they also have, I think, in my opinion, a running back room that once again not known. But not known doesn't mean a weakness. That's a part that, again, people need to start understanding. There is a difference. When you don't have a 1,000-yard runner, that doesn't mean that you're a bad runner. There have been teams for years that have really good playmakers that fit certain criteria, and then guys that just are explosive that they come on nowhere. I mean, Jalen Wright was a guy at Tennessee that I remember looking at that immediately exploded last season. And like you look at Georgia, they had a bunch of guys that were just really, really role players. Maybe that's what you have instead at Kentucky this year, where Chip Trainum is a role player. He's good on third down. He's great inside the red zone. Jamarian Wilcox, the redshirt freshman, steps up and is a vertical threat downfield, home run speed. Who knows what it is? But what I like about this squad is that there's so much variety and versatility on offense. It's going to be really interesting. Again, Kentucky just feels like a squad that is probably going to master anywhere between that 8-9 win roster. And they could end up getting 10 wins if they have a really solid offensive line. Because I can tell you what, that front seven, you're not running against it. You will win one way, and it will be through the air. And hopefully that pass rush can get to a quarterback so that way you don't even have to worry about the secondary.
Cole, is there a more must-win in the league, especially early on in the season, than the second week, September 7th matchup at Kroger against South Carolina? I think both those teams need that win. I think it's a tone setter for both those teams throughout the season, for the rest of the season.
I think that's how you have to phrase it, is that it's going to be a tone setter throughout the regular season, because afterwards you have three matchups that
next week for Kentucky.
You got Georgia, then you get the Ohio game, then you get to go on the road and play Ole Miss, which again, Ole Miss just feels like they're a curve above everybody else in terms of the expectations. But then also you got to close out the year with games against Auburn, Tennessee, Texas, and Louisville. And I feel like that if you can have a very good solidified win, that builds confidence for you. And it goes both ways. You know, South Carolina and Kentucky feel like squads that if they go 9-3, it won't be the most shocking thing in the world, because if some team out of the blue finds their way into that competition and conversation, I feel like Kentucky can be that squad this year. But that week 2 game, I think, is a really big tone setter. I agree with you. Tone setter is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, how many automatic losses do you really see on the schedule right now, Cole? I would say, there's no automatic losses.
I say one.
Don't think Kentucky's going to win. Probably Georgia at Ole Miss. I'll say Georgia at Ole Miss.
I'm not ready to say Ole Miss just yet. I'm not
going to say at Tennessee and at Texas. I'd be shocked if they won any of 4 of those games. They never beat 10. I mean, I know I don't like to say because every year's its own different story, but I feel like death, taxes, and no offense, Kentucky fans, Tennessee beating Kentucky is a pretty normal thing every year.
I won't do that, because of it always feels like somebody drops the ball at one point. So is Ole Miss going to drop the ball against Kentucky? Is Kentucky going to march on in and play up to Texas's level? Because Texas, again, has been a team for years where they've played down to the competition. And it works in the Big 12, but it won't work in the SEC. You know, Tennessee, I want to see it from Nico. Again, we're hearing all these conversations, and I don't mean to go off topic, but like Paul Feinbaum bringing up how Arch Manning is in a better situation than Alabama. Ty Simpson. That's like, neither one of them have done anything since arriving on campus, but one's a big time name whose uncle was a 500 quarterback and beat Tom Brady twice. So, you know, automatically we're going to think that he's better off. So it's just like, you say that, you don't know what you're getting at a guy like Nico Iamaleava. You don't know what you're getting in a Brock Vandergriff because you've barely seen him play. So maybe that's the case where Tennessee does drop the ball because their offense isn't up to the standard. So I think I would
agree with you on that, but I think realistically, if you told Kentucky fans they went 8-4 and those were their 4 losses, they'd be like, "Yeah, I'm cool."
They believe it. No, I mean, would you not? Believe
I think
it?
The rest of them are all winnable. I mean, look, we're not going over the whole schedule in depth, game to game, but Southern Miss, I think they win that South Carolina game at home. Beat Ohio, Vandy at home should be a win. At Florida, we'll see, middle of the year. That would be one of those. That's a game, you tell me if I'm wrong here, Cole. I think Kentucky has to get, if they want to get to 8, 9, 10 wins, they got to go win in Ben Hill Griffin back-to-back times. I mean,
they do.
Again, Auburn at home, it's a winnable game, I think.
I think if Auburn on the road, that's not a winnable game. Or it's a lot more challenging of a game.
Yeah.
But Auburn at home, no, I think it's fine. You don't
just like how I feel about Tennessee and Kentucky. Tennessee usually, for whatever reason, always usually wins that game. I feel the same way about Kentucky against Louisville. Yeah. Mark Stoops has had Louisville's number, whether it's Bobby Petrino, Satterfield over at Cincinnati now when he was at Louisville. And
Jeff Brom last year.
Yeah. So, I feel pretty good about Kentucky getting that one until I don't. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm higher on them, I feel like, than most. I'll put it this way. I'd be shocked if they lost or if they went 6-6, I think they're closer to a 9-win team than they are 6.
They're a very intriguing team to me because it's going to come down to two main elements: your your offensive line and your secondary. They end up playing above average or average at best. That's an 8-win team. If they play at an elite level better than we expect, that's a 10-win team. Because again, we know what history has said. And I am a believer in history. I don't believe in stats all the time, but I believe in repetition. Yeah. And repetition has said over the last 6 years, average season, kind of below average season, over exceeding season, average season, below average season, over exceeding season. And now we're looking at it this year. And here we are once again.
Usually when they have some veterans back on defense, this is the year they have that. They have some guys that have played a lot of football added in, like me and you talked about with Jamon Dumas-Johnson, another piece that's played a lot of football. Not at Kentucky, but he's played a lot of football in this league.
They have talent everywhere. They also, I think, have an identity that they can rely on very early on, which is the ability to throw the football deep because they have speed. And I think the front seven being able to stop the run and making the offenses one-dimensional, especially an offense that is going to be like South Carolina, where you don't know who the number one wide receiver is, and you don't know when they're going to find out who that number one receiver is. But they're going to have to in that game because if you're going to take out Lenore Sellers and you're going to take out Rocket Sanders on the ground to where they are a one-dimensional offense, which again is a really big deal. You know what I found interesting is that, and I can tell you from people that I've spoken to internally, the whole Texas A&M thing. Stoops came out and said, I was heavily pursued. I'll leave it at that. At the time, at the very end, it wasn't a move that I wanted to make. Regardless of if A&M was fully interested or if one person at A&M was interested, I think that, again, A&M fans rationally over-exacerbated thinking that this was not going to be a good hire. It would have been a great hire, in my opinion. I love what Stoops
brings. There's a lot of similarities in Elko and Stoops.
But also the thing that I think is really important here is that now he's sticking around. Well, if he's sticking around, doesn't that say something about where the culture is right now in Lexington? Like because of even if they said, oh, at the very last second, we're gonna pull the wool from underneath you. We're not gonna keep you. We're gonna hire Elko instead. It still was a move where if he kind of went, oh, you know what, I want to stick around. Like, isn't that say something?
No, I agree. I mean, I think from what me and you probably talked to some of the same people, but somebody in there, they floated that name. It didn't go well. Like for whatever reason, it just didn't go well. But I think that's Kentucky's gain from keeping him. I mean, it always feels like Stoops is always a little like I don't know. It feels like it's a weird vibe at times there between him and Kentucky. Like it's kind of like you've been dating for so long, you've been married for so long, you're just bickering to bicker at some point. I don't know. Maybe Cal leaving. I thought it was hilarious. Somebody asked that question.
Yeah.
Thoughts on John Calipari leaving to go to Arkansas? How's that? And I'm sure that relationship really wasn't as bad as people make it out.
It's football school. That's why. It's a football school, so he wants to go to a basketball school.
Yeah, and there's always rumors out there floated Stoops is going to go back to his alma mater, Iowa, whenever Ferentz hangs it up. I don't know if that is. I'm not trying to turn this into that. But, again, I mean, before we get out of here, Cole, because you always remind me, I want to plug our guys in here at MyBookie. Go to mybookie.ag, use code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer, your first deposit. Guys, the Kentucky win total, 6.5 in Vegas right now.
I hammer it.
I would hit over.
I hit the over. I easily see 7 wins on the schedule.
And
I see 9.
Me and Cole here, 7+ wins. Go visit our buddies over at mybookie.ag. Use that first time free code SECU, guys. I'm telling you, I'm with Cole there. I like the over 6.5. That's one of the more ones I'm confident in, just like I am Ole Miss 9.5.
I'd agree. And honestly, when you look at that line, it could be the best bet. It could honestly be the easiest bet that I make because of, again, death taxes every 3 years. Kentucky finds a way to 9+ wins.
Especially if they win that week 2 win. You feel real good about that bet at that point. If they start off 2-0, and I know they got at Ole Miss and Georgia still in that early part of the game, but if they can get that South Carolina win, I think you feel pretty good about it. But Cole, before we get out of here, before we do our full day recap with our guy Chris, who's got boots on the ground, you got anything else to add on Mark Stoops stepping up to the podium as the final coach of the 2024 SEC Media Days?
I thought it was the best way to end pressers. The oldest guy gets the most time to be able to say a swan song to Dallas. Congratulations to all who were there. And we are done with SEC Media Days. We have one more thing to do, but it's been a marathon, and I'm ready for an ice cold beer and to finally freaking take a relaxing break.
And guys, apologize for you guys have been following so long. I had some internet in Atlanta. We had some thunderstorms. I don't know why it went out, but we're back on, guys, and we will be doing a final day 4 reaction, like I mentioned, with our guy Chris Phillips, who's over, got boots on the ground from Dallas. But for myself, the host Dave Shumate, my buddy Cole Thompson. Remember, Twitter, X, give the guy Mr. Cole Thompson. Give him a follow, guys. I hope you enjoyed these live reactions. We did. Again, apologize, this came out a little later, but we still got it to you. Me and Cole, high on Kentucky, man. I would go hammer the over 6.5 win total for Vegas. I think it's going to be one of the better front sevens. I think Cole would agree, guys. But for everybody, it's been fun. Fun reactions. Appreciate all y'all. You have a phenomenal evening.